Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Carrow Road. Friday night football for Norwich City, of course, because of television purposes mainly. They find themselves playing at Carrow Road under lights again. I think it's the second game in 4 days, which feels probably like we were here about 2 minutes ago. We've, as you will have noticed, started this video a little bit earlier today because obviously we've got some news to discuss before we come to the team news, which we will be live for when that drops at 7 o'clock, and we'll bring that to you as per normal. But Norwich City released a statement. It was 4 o'clock this afternoon. I'll read it in full, and then myself and Paddy will discuss it further. It read this: 4 paragraphs. Norwich City has issued a notice to the club shareholders for a general meeting on Monday, September 12th, 2022. The formal business will be limited and will include a resolution to appoint Mark Attanasio, an American businessman and principal owner of the Milwaukee Brewers baseball team, as a new director of the football club. Only the club's current directors and shareholders will be present, and given the anticipated short length of the meeting, shareholders are encouraged to vote by proxy. The club will issue a further announcement following the conclusion of the shareholder proceedings and legal formalities. Paddy Abbott, we reported this first in May about these talks, about the prospect of Mark Attanasio coming on board at Norwich City. Just under 2 months later, we're pretty much there, essentially. There is a meeting in a couple of weeks' time to confirm this, but essentially, as we understand it, it would essentially need Delia Smith and Michael Wynne-Jones to vote in favour of this motion for him to then be appointed as a director of the football club. So it seems all but a formality, essentially. What's your reaction to kind of today's news that we've been talking about probably so much in the last couple of months or so?
It does for 2 months, 2 years, it feels like, Connor, to be brutally honest. But I think we all felt once we initially broke the story and then moved it on back end of pre-season. That was the first public comment the morning of the Hibs friendly, the final game of pre-season, actually, where the club held a Q&A with certain fans in an Edinburgh location and confirmed that, paraphrasing, that there was shareholder talks ongoing for Michael Fulger's shares, and it would be something that took date in a matter of weeks, and they've been true to their word on that. And ultimately, we've got another 4 weeks, really, if it's 12th of September, so there's a bit more waiting time, but that is going to be a formality. What we learnt at the Edinburgh Q&A was that this was very much a Michael Fulger instigated process at the turn of the year, and that he was very keen for it to be managed and shaped by Norwich City Football Club. So, the fact that Norwich City have been driving this process, and obviously then, once Michael Fulger indicated he wanted to divest himself of his shareholding, just under 16% in total, then it's really very much on the club's terms that we're now where we're at, and as a result, that will be a formality. There's going to be no twist in the tail. Mark Attanasio will be confirmed as a director of Norwich City Football Club, and for me, pretty much that's what we expected to happen. So yes, as the statement alluded to, there's legal process, and these things do take time, and it is probably more complex than us on the outside looking in appreciate it is, because we're not party to all the nuances of the very painstaking discussions, I'm sure, that have had to take place with Attanasio and his group, Michael Fulger clearly, and also the football club, and the majority shareholders as part of that, Delia and Michael. So there are reasons why it's taken to this point, but for me, we felt it was going to get to this point, and really the story now is where do we go next? And that's not getting ahead of ourselves, but clearly, and we've touched on this in various debates on these platforms, on the Pink Un, since the news first broke, why is Mark Attanasio wanting to get involved with Norwich City? It clearly isn't to take a 16% shareholding and sit there and maybe just be happy to turn up at the odd game of soccer, as the Americans like to call it. So I think we all expect that this is the start of a process. We've seen what American investment looks like at various other English clubs and how it's an incremental journey. And I'd be amazed if this isn't the start of something rather than the end. So for me, the story is almost now, yep, okay, this is confirmation now, subject to the legal proceedings that will happen on the 12th of September with the shareholders and the directors as they stand. But what next? What is the next phase of this? And but maybe we'll get into it in a bit more detail later on, Connor. But we're obviously trying to stay ahead of the curve on this story, as we have done from the very start. And I think we've spoken to enough people to to say with fair degree of confidence that it isn't going to end at a 16% shareholding for Mark Attanasio. So it's maybe more the pace of this journey, but make no mistake, this isn't the end of the journey. So really exciting. Be interesting, obviously, to see what the view is tonight. To that news from Norwich fans on the broadcast here. Stephen Noakes, he's right. That's a fair point. It is a shareholder to shareholder, essentially new to old transaction. No direct investment, but as I say, it's leverage, isn't it? It's I think the start of something rather than the end. And don't underestimate, given this guy's background and the expertise he's got in terms of the strategy and what it takes to sort of develop a major sporting entity, which is what the Brewers are, a massive baseball team franchise in the US. So don't underestimate what he can bring in terms of his knowledge, albeit it's transferable skills, baseball to soccer, but the administration side, the business side of it, all of that is going to be really useful expertise to bring onto the Norwich board. But clearly, as Stephen said there, what will it mean possibly in terms of direct investment? And it's worth reiterating that right here, right now, this is just about a shareholding transfer. No direct funds that we're aware of as yet going into the football club. But I think you'd have to be incredibly naive if you didn't think it was the start of something rather than, simply a change of who occupies a seat around a boardroom table at Norwich. It clearly isn't that.
No, exactly that. I wanted to pick a couple of lines. You obviously had your chat with Kieran Maguire. I think we did that maybe in the week after the story came out. That was very good. I'd urge anyone to maybe who wants to know potentially what the various roadmaps are for this and those various steps that Paddy spoke about to go and watch that. And actually, funny enough, I was speaking to someone who's worked in football finance relatively recently, a couple of weeks ago maybe, and you mentioned the complexity of the deal. They now work outside of football, and they said to me, acquiring shares in a football team or trying to buy a football team is more complex than anything they've ever been involved with before in normal day-to-day business. So that goes to show why this maybe has been, or maybe why it's felt slightly prolonged. Whether it actually has been or not, I suppose only the main characters can tell you. In terms of kind of the meeting itself, Pad, if we kind of take it at face value, this is at this moment in time merely a meeting to appoint Mark Attanasio as a director. We obviously know that there's going to be more to it than that. You mentioned Michael Folger's 15.9% shareholding as well. They didn't do this when Zoe Ward was appointed onto the board, so that's worth sort of stating first and foremost. But also the kind of last paragraph, I suppose, suggests there is and will be more to come, and it's just about now kind of what it looks like, isn't it? And it's going to be, as you said, right there. It does feel like the first step, the first step on the ladder, I suppose, of the Mark Attanasio to almost get a feel of what football is and how it kind of operates as well.
Yeah, correct. I mean, the big difference for me, drawing a parallel with Zoe Ward's appointment to the board, is that one is taking on, as it stands, the second biggest shareholding in the club. That's an ownership cycle, essentially. Zoe Ward has been appointed to the board. As far as I'm aware, she doesn't have any major shareholding, certainly not on the scale of Michael Folger's family shares, because it isn't just registered in Michael's name, as we know, if you look at the breakdown of the shares. So it is different, and maybe because of that, the scale of it, and bearing in mind, that level, I mean, obviously the Turners, was probably the last major outside investment shake up to the dynamic of the board at senior level, that maybe they need to, seen to be, as we were discussing off camera, transparent and open, and that this is a very due process that they're following, because it is essentially, once that goes through, the second biggest shareholding after the owners. So, that isn't an insignificant amount, even as it stands. But clearly, if we feel it's going to take on from there, then there's more to come. There's far more to come, in fact. We know the mechanics. We've done plenty of content. You did a very good piece. It's on the Pinkin app about the stages from once this is confirmed, what it needs to take. I think 30% would trigger an automatic having to make an offer for the remaining shares. It's not beyond the gift that you could hoover up shares that would take you to that level. And for me, reiterating what I said at the outset, it's the pace of this thereafter. We'll assume there's absolutely no hitches between now and the 12th of September, and then more importantly on the night, and that vote goes through and he's elected as a director, and there's no reason to believe that isn't the case, because clearly, we're here now getting on for September. This process began in January. There won't be any divergence between the parties now in terms of the financials around this, or the understanding of what this means, the fact that we're now being publicly told as a meeting to ratify this, you can take it as read that everybody's in agreement who matters in this process, internally at least. And it is now for me the pace of this. You referenced the Kieran Maguire chat we had, and the most direct parallel he could draw was what's happened at Leeds, where there was a vehicle from the San Francisco 49ers, an NFL franchise in the US, who took in an initial small shareholding in Leeds, but over the course of a period of 4 or 5 seasons, I'm going to say, have now grown it to, if they aren't already the majority shareholders, they're very soon going to be. The agreements are in place. They're going to own Ellen Road as well, the stadium. And, it's hard to look at what's happening here potentially and not draw a parallel there. But the rate of that acceleration and how quickly, I think that's the fascinating aspect of this now. And of course, as we all know, Delia and Michael, their longevity, 25 years plus, but not getting any younger, and at some point there needs to be a change, and there will be a change inevitably. And it's just going to be really fascinating how they manage that change now. But clearly now there is subject, again, keep having to reiterate that because we're still here, the other side of this being ratified, but subject to that going through without any issues, there is now seemingly a succession plan, which there hasn't been, I don't feel, up to this point. Not somebody who's already attached to the club as they will be then, who could take this on and take the ownership of the club and then bring it into a different, mode of travel maybe, because we all know this guy's background. We know the wealth he possesses. We know his, success with the Brewers and what he's done off the field in terms of transforming their stadium and the infrastructure, as well as on the field. All of that has to be really exciting if you're a Norwich fan looking at this. A guy proven in, top level sports administration, sports ownership, but with the finance, which has always been, as we know, the criticism of Delia and Michael that they haven't. There you go, yeah. I think we got the same memo here, Connor. Stripey.
I was going to say that.
But I lost my train of thought there. Cheers, Matt. But ultimately, the big difference here is a guy who's reportedly worth $700 million can clearly, while not U-turning from self-sustainable and self-funded, but clearly can also, when required, potentially invest sums that would be beyond the gift of Michael and Delia, and that's the hard reality of it. So that's probably why there is that underlying excitement, I think, among a lot of Norwich fans. While everybody accepts right here, right now, it's a small shareholding transaction, it's what could become down the line and what that would mean for this football club. Because I think we've all seen now graphically illustrated, a lot of talk of Forest and what they're spending in recent days to try and sustain and establish in the Premier League. Nigh on probably impossible under this current model for Norwich. Even if they've got their recruitment right, which they didn't, this time last summer, still would have been a huge task to not only stay up, but then sustain themselves. And, whether you like it or not, that is the top end of this game in the country now, is money. It is, ultimately. And to bridge that divide, however astute you can be, and however brilliant you are at your resources and managing your resources, without those deep pockets, I don't think you stand a chance, frankly, nowadays.
Absolutely right. Let's turn our focus, our attentions onto what's happening this evening. Norwich City hosting Millwall here at Carrow Road tonight. Friday night football, of course, only played on Tuesday night, a 2-1 win against Huddersfield. I think we kind of built this on the pod as what felt like a big week for Norwich. I think you assigned 4 points, which could be kind of what they needed to feel like things were moving in the right direction. But the team news is about a minute away, so we'll bring that to you as soon as it drops. Worth adding that Millwall haven't actually won here since 1968. I don't know if that's a positive thing to mention at this stage or not. Certainly not for those long-time Norwich people, I suppose. And here is the team news. I have it for you. One change from Tuesday night. Onel Hernandez in for Todd Cantwell, who drops to the bench. Timu Pukki back in the matchday squad for Norwich City. So they line up like this. Crawling goal, Aarons, Omar Pamadeli, Hanley and Kenny McLean in the back four. Gibbs, Nunez and Dowell the midfield three. Sonani on the right, Hernandez on the left, with Josh Sargent up front. The subs bench, Angus Gunn, Ben Gibson, Gabriel Sara, Todd Cantwell, Aaron Ramsey, Milo Rashica and Timu Pukki. One change, Pad. I think if we were walking into Carrow Road tonight, we would have probably expected the change to come potentially at left back with Sam Byron returning to training. Obviously, may well have been a big ask for him given the lack of pre-season and the disruption that he's had to his own individual schedule over that time. Onel Hernandez gets a start, probably fully merited on the cameo that we saw on Tuesday evening.
Yes, but still a surprise for me, because I think he underlined for me where he might be most effective for Norwich this season, which is games against. Well, I mean, obviously they were down to 10 men, but even if it's 11v11, that injection of pace and thrust against tiring defenders, in the final quarter, we'll say, that for me is probably where he's going to be most effective. But you couldn't disagree with it because he was excellent, and I think I tweeted after the final whistle at a crucial time when they got that goal back to be able to give the ball to a guy who can take it, stretch the play, take players on, get it as far away from Tim Krul's goal as you'd want it to be, then he fulfilled the brief to a T. So not surprised, but maybe a little bit surprised, but ultimately he's done what Dean Smith wants from any player who gets an opportunity to grab it, and he needs to carry on in the same vein he finished the other night. I'm just noting that obviously Pukki's return is sadly done for Jordan Hugill. So that's a tough one on him to take, but as Dean Smith routinely keeps saying, he's going to be leaving good players in the stands the more and more fit and available lads come back into the mix, and he's got the luxury tonight, not to rush Sam Byron back as well, because I think McLean did a very passable impression the other night. So, yeah, I'd have been surprised if there'd been more than one change, but if you'd have asked me to stick my neck out, I wouldn't have probably gone Hernandez in, Cantwell out. So, interesting. Another opportunity for Sargent, of course, and young Gibbs, he's really grasped his opportunity. So, positive, and, if we can get another start as we got the other night, then I fancy him to go on and win this game as well.
Yeah, likewise. The team sheets we've been having are actually still warm, so these are very much hot off the press, literally. The Millwall team, they have former Ipswich Town goalkeeper Bartosz Białkowski in goal, Danny McNamara, Murray Wallace, Sean Hutchinson is their captain, Benik Afobe, Billy Mitchell, Scott Malone, Tyler Burry, Ryan Leonard, George Saville and George Honeyman. Their starting 11. Their subs bench, George Long, Jake Cooper, Tom Bradshaw, Zian Fleming, Charlie Cresswell, the Leeds loanee, Jamie Shackleton and Andres Vogelslammer as well. Pads. Todd Cantwell dropped out of the starting 11 for Hernandez. We kind of covered the Hernandez coming in element to it, but Todd dropping out, does that feel slightly harsh given his early season performances? I mean, Dean Smith has been very clear. He is judging the players purely, particularly attacking players, on the currency of goals and assists. How would you kind of weigh up that decision? Obviously, we don't know whether there's any kind of fitness-related element to it. I guess you will put that question to him post-match.
We will. So we'll put that caveat on there. Just as you were talking, I was just trying to remind myself of what he did the other night. I mean, there was one or two nice bits of play, but he certainly didn't push himself forward like a Sinani in terms of goals and assists, and that might have been to give him his due. He's playing in front of Kenny McLean. Maybe he was mindful that he had to protect that man a little bit in an unaccustomed role. Whereas, of course, Sinani's got Max Aarons behind him, on you go and just influence the play. So, but I don't think he he grabbed that game. I thought Dowell was good, the other night as well, and of course Nunes did what he did, and Gibbs was very solid. So, maybe there's a debate, but I think it might be more a reflection of not only what Hernandez offered, but maybe he's looking at Millwall tonight and he's expecting a team who are going to be very low block defensively. They're just going to try and sit in, and maybe Hernandez with his pace to get around the side. And of course, you're playing Sargent, so a bit of service in the air as well from wide areas. Maybe that's in his thoughts. If you've got Sinani and you've got Hernandez wide, plenty of width, try and get around that low block, and then feeding Sargent as Sinani did brilliantly for that goal the other night. So maybe it's less a reflection on Todd, more, as he said when he omitted Jordan Hugill at Hull, it's going to be horses for courses. And if he's looked at Millwall and he's felt, I need maybe more the direct thrust that Onel Hernandez brings rather than Todd Cantwell's kind of more technical proficiency, looking for those pockets in front of players, then you can see it. But I certainly would expect, if the game dictates, he'd have no hesitation in throwing Todd into the mix, because you're right, he started very well this season and he's delivered everything that I'm sure Dean Smith has asked of him. So he'll be disappointed, I'm sure. I don't think he'd want to be dropping out, but he'll see the bigger picture, and ultimately, if this selection leads to another 3 points tonight, and Norwich have picked up 6 points this week from 2 home games, then everybody's happy.
Yeah, it does feel like maybe there's an attempt to balance it a little bit. Sinani drifts inside. We know that delivered that wonderful in-swing cross. There's also a willingness for him to drift in on that left foot. I think Hernandez provides a little bit of width. Certainly impressed when he came on. It's going to be really interesting to see how he does from the start. It's his first Norwich City start since March 2020. So that's quite something. Having just checked that, that's a long time since he made a Norwich City start. Big opportunity for him tonight to make the most of it. Teemu Pukki's return pad on the bench this evening, which is probably what we expected. Dean Smith said to me at the press conference yesterday that it would be a late decision on him. No Jordan Hugill in the 20, which is again interesting for various reasons. But having Teemu Pukki back on the bench, has that put just a little bit more pressure on Josh Sargent, who performed very well on Tuesday night, or was that pressure already there anyway? Because it does feel like if Teemu Pukki, certainly from a Norwich City perspective, is fit, then Teemu Pukki starts.
And I think that's the key. I mean, I didn't do the presser yesterday. You did, but didn't he say he'd barely just got a trainer over his foot yesterday? So it makes no sense if that's the case to risk him tonight, given how well Sargent performed in that central striking role. And just double check there, but it's Bournemouth in the Cup next Tuesday. So in an ideal world, you don't need to use him. Sit on the bench, doesn't use him in the Cup next midweek, and then he's had another getting on for 2 weeks to rest that foot because he's far too important to play him through the pain barrier, and then he breaks down and he's out for a prolonged length of time. So no, that's an entirely easy selection for me tonight, given what Sargent did midweek and given the fitness concerns around Teemu Pukki. There's no need to flog him at this stage of the season. I think you're right, no Jordan Hugill again tonight probably does indicate, he's not going to be with Adam either, of course, still to drop into the mix, not maybe featuring quite as heavily as he would have liked. So probably one to watch between now and the end of the window, I think, in terms of what happens with Jordan Hugill. But that right call, I think. I mean, what signal does it send if Teemu Pukki, having been, even as late as yesterday, not really fit to be out training, started tonight, and Josh Sargent, who did what he did the other night, either steps out of the side or is switched to the right-hand side of that attacking free, doesn't send the right signal, doesn't reward what he did. So, on you go again. I don't think he'll feel any extra pressure with Teemu on the bench for me. It is a little bit blue and white, isn't it? Yeah. We didn't really think about that.
Yeah, we definitely should have coordinated this better, I think. But there we go.
Yeah. But, no, I don't think he'll feel any pressure, only the pressure to perform again, because you spoke to him after the game. You saw his club interview. It was more what he didn't say than what he did say, Josh Sargent. He was clearly itching to get an opportunity down the middle of the park and felt maybe that's when you have to judge him in terms of his goal output, and he delivered what he needed to do. He follows that up tonight. Then Teemu knows he's got to perform, because there is a guy there who, given the opportunity, looks like he's got goals in him in the Championship, and that's great to see, because somebody needs to take the burden off Teemu Pukki third time around in the Championship.
Since Dean Smith's arrived at Norwich, Pad, I mean, he's had to chop and change quite a lot. He's been looking for a winning solution. Obviously, a lot of that has come in the Premier League. Obviously, it's kind of, I'm not going to use the word hangover because he doesn't want that word, but it has bled in a little bit to the start of the Championship season. This felt tonight like the first opportunity he's really had, certainly probably since those back-to-back wins back in February over Watford and Everton, when even up to that he had to change his team because of various injuries. I know there's been one change tonight in terms of Juan Hernandez coming in, but it does feel now like there is some degree of continuity for Dean Smith in that starting 11, doesn't there? Particularly if they could go on and win tonight.
Absolutely, and I'd distill that down to what's happened now on the right-hand side of that midfield. Rashika gets the opportunity in the first 3 games by common consent, doesn't really grasp it, not influencing games, certainly not having goals and assists, which he really didn't offer at Premier League level. Out you come, in you go, Danel, and a goal and assist, and followed on from his League Cup performance, and he starts again tonight. It's a simple game when you boil it down. If Dean Smith puts players in and they perform as the floodlights come on full beam, we're not being interrogated. It feels a bit like that as the lights on the South Stand dazzle. But
I've bought my sunglasses, now.
Yeah. But it will. If they continue now in the same vein as they did on Tuesday night, win the game again tonight, skip over Bournemouth because League Cup, different priorities. You'd be surprised if there was too many more changes, injury and fitness permitting, for the next league game on the following Saturday week, because that's all Dean Smith wants. He wants players who go out, perform, and through that get results. And if they do that, they'll stay in the side. It's a very simple premise. So no surprise, bar Onel coming in and Todd going out, that he's more or less said to the same personnel, that'll do for me. See it again and let's roll it on. So, and conversely, it's for those lads who are now on the bench, the likes of Rashica, Cantwell, Zara, even Ben Gibson. When they do get an opportunity, whether it's off the bench or whether it's through injury, they will know I've really got to hit my straps, because if I don't, I'll be out the side. And with the resource that Dean Smith's got available, it might be a while before they get back in again. And ultimately, for Norwich to achieve what they need to achieve this season, that internal competition is absolutely imperative. As Dean Smith said, he didn't have it last season. It wasn't even the 11. We probably could name the subs every week in the Premier League. And, irrespective of the quality gap, when you haven't got that competition for places, that edge isn't there in terms of day-to-day and training. And that's probably reflected in the level of performance. These players tonight in that 11 know if they don't perform, there's viable alternatives now. And that's, for Dean Smith and those Norwich fans, that's a great position to be in.
Good stuff, Paddy. Thank you very much. Thank you guys all, of course, very much for watching as well. Hopefully you'll be able to see Carrow Road with the brightness of those lights in the stand, but we will of course bring you live updates should you require them. The Pinkin Plus app, the place to go. Pinkin.com, top left, there's the Pinkin Plus tab. Click on that, you can take out a month's free trial to access all of our exclusive content over there, not just written stuff, some videos as well. That's about it. We've been live for a little while now, so hopefully we've covered all bases. Let's see what we get tonight. Going to be a chance for Norwich City to record their first back-to-back home wins since March 2021. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.